What is up, young adult family? We kicked off our Sunday night last night with a couple songs up front, leading us right into, I wouldn't even say a short sermon, because I feel like a short sermon's 30 minutes. You know? Like I feel like
You
that's...
feel like a short sermon is 30 minutes?
Well, I mean, most sermons are an hour. I guess nowadays...
It depends. I guess it depends on your definition of short.
Yeah.
Right, when Chris is preaching 30 minutes,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem short.
We did
know?
a shorter message than usual
Yeah.
on Sunday night because we went into our small group time after that. It's something that, if you've never been to one of our worship experiences or you've never hung out with us, something that we are very passionate about is community. We believe in doing this thing together, because life is hard enough and it's a lot more difficult when you are in it by yourself, and so our small groups, our groups really help with that. It helps people get connected, helps people, have conversations that help dive deeper into what we've been discussing and things like that. And so I just kind of wrapped up the message series that we've been in. If you've been watching the podcast or attending our worship experiences, we've been in a series called The Talk, where we've been talking about relationships and sexual boundaries and sexual immorality and things like that. And so we just took some time to wrap that up Sunday night.
Yep. And it was good. I felt like you did a really good job. Your message was around the idea of you can't love people, you can't show people the love of Christ unless you know what the love of Christ is, unless you know what the love of Jesus truly is. I felt like that was really good because we've been talking about having a Christ-centered relationship, or even just like having a relationship while living out a Christ-like life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way we can possibly do that. No way we as Christians can emulate Christ or try to live a Christ-like relationship unless we know who Christ is and the love that he showed for all of creation, but also just the love that he showed within his lifetime to those around him.
For sure, yeah. Kind of reminds me of I got the privilege of speaking with our CPC student ministry last week, and on a similar subject. We really just talked about living out your faith and proclaiming the message of Jesus to those around you. And one of the points I made when I was speaking with them was it's really hard to proclaim something that you know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was telling them, like, I know nothing about soccer. Like, I'm a big sports fan, but soccer's a sport that I don't really follow. So I can't sit here and tell you guys, like, oh, I'm this big soccer fan, and then you ask me, well, what do you know about it? I'm like, nothing. I can't probably name you a team. I don't know more than maybe like 3 players. Messi is a person, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Ronaldo, I think I know that guy. And then that's...
Do you know David Beckham?
Married to a Spice Girl.
Yeah, he used to play.
Yeah. I know
Me and my
that
wife
guy.
actually just watched the documentary on him.
Yep.
It was actually really good.
Really?
As much as I do not like soccer, like at all.
Yeah.
Like not 1% of me.
I'll
not
check it out.
0.5% of me like soccer, but it was a great story.
I'll check it out. But yeah, I'm not a soccer person either. So I like, it would be hard for me to sit up here and have a conversation about soccer.
If I sit there and watch soccer, I genuinely am curious why people chose this sport. Like, there's so many other sports.
That's a deep feeling. I didn't know you felt that way.
That is so sad.
But it's the same way. Like, if I'm claiming to be a follower of Christ, if I'm claiming to live this life, then I need to know. I need to know about him. I need to learn more about him. I need to constantly be growing in that. And I think it was a perfect way to wrap up this message series, because as we've been talking about having these relationships and doing so in a godly way, doing so in a Christ-like way, we can't do that unless we understand the concept of the love that Christ has for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once we understand that, and we can grow in our relationship with Christ, or we're growing in our relationship with Christ, He'll begin to reveal, if we're called to it, like if Christ, if in Jesus' plan or in God's plan for our life is to be in a relationship, He'll begin to reveal who that person is, how we can better love them, and then how to just live our lives out with them. But it also goes the other way as well. Having a Christ-centered relationship can help you grow in your relationship with Christ.
Mm.
Having a Christ-centered relationship with a partner on this earth can help you grow in your relationship with Christ, or at least it should, because you're a three-strand cord. That's how we talk about it here at Connection Point Church. Whenever you get married, you become like you're a three-strand cord. Your partner, and God. So as married couples, or even as even while you're dating, you and your partner should be helping each other grow in their relationship with Christ, whether that's reading the Word together, or praying over each other, talking to others about Christ together as one team. You should constantly be growing in both your relationship with them, and then in your relationship with Christ because of them.
For sure, yeah, and I hope that's something that, for those that have been listening to either this podcast or the messages in our worship experiences, that's something I've really tried to drive home, is that if you're in the right kind of relationship, and this is true in friendships, this is true in dating relationships, this is true in marriage. If you are in the right type of relationship, that should be pushing you closer to Jesus,
Yes.
instead of pulling you away. And if you're honest with yourself, and you feel like that relationship is pulling you away, then there's probably some cause to reevaluate there.
Yeah.
It should be pushing you towards wanting to grow in Him. It should be pushing you towards wanting to spend more time in Him. It should be pushing you towards wanting to pursue your calling more. I'm curious, with you guys, because we've mentioned before here that all three of us are married men.
Yep.
What are some of the ways you would say specifically your marriage, your relationship with your wife has helped you grow spiritually?
I touched on this a little bit last night in our small group, because I don't remember the questions. I wish we were brought paper. I took a picture, but one of the things I said is that she helps keep me accountable, right? Like if I get super, super mad or super frustrated, I slip up and say a word I shouldn't have said, like she's going to say something, which in the moment definitely makes me more mad, right? Like I hate it, right? Like I've never been like, hey, thanks for holding me accountable in this moment like that. Like, no, I hate it. But looking back, it's like,
It's needed.
that's something I will need the rest of my life, is that accountability. And not just in that situation, plenty of other situations too. But that's just the one I think of the most, is something like that.
For sure.
Grayson, he's talked about his story about meeting his wife, I think on here. I think it was last week. I have a very similar testimony in that I was not. I consider myself a Christian, but I was not attending church. I was not reading my Bible, being alone with God in prayer or in worship. And then I met my wife. We were dating, and she was the one that reintroduced me to church. So, just in our dating relationship, she was, at least at the beginning, very much the leader, the spiritual leader of our relationship. I like to think that I have taken that over, considering that I'm supposed to. But even now, so I am very, very much not knowledgeable about like names and stories of, especially of the Old Testament, because I did not listen in Sunday school growing up. My wife did, and my wife loves all that. So now, like it's not necessarily helping me in my faith, but it is helping me understand like what the story is that we may be reading, or the story is that it's being taught in a service or in a worship experience here at Connection Point Church. Because she understands, like she knows the story, she knows the people, and she's helping me to grasp what it is that God felt like His people needed to know through the Word.
Yeah.
In the beginning of our relationship, I guess it kind of still falls under accountability, but it's it was weird, but it was awesome to see her spiritual growth, right? Because I was not necessarily new to faith, but new to taking it serious, and trying to live it out. So seeing her being that spiritual leader for me when I needed it was definitely awesome to see.
Yeah.
See that.
Something else my wife does is we're honest here. I'm really bad about like whenever other people will tell me they have things going on with them, like things that are going on in their lives, things that are wrong, I'm really quick to say like, can I pray with you, especially like the kids in the youth group.
Yeah.
But with my wife, I'm not that way. I don't know why that is. I'll talk with her. I'm not one to say like, hey, let me pray over you real quick.
I've been the same way. I have no idea why,
I think it's
but it's super like, which maybe to her it's not,
Mhm.
but to me it's like this is very awkward
Yeah.
because I think it's a whole new type of intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
right? Like there's obviously other types of intimacy that we've talked about during the talk, but this is like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I did it for a while because it seemed like everybody was talking about it,
Right.
and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna.
Mhm.
And I had to like amp myself up,
Yeah.
and then the prayer sucked because I'm just like so nervous. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm never doing that again. Which I tried and tried again,
Mhm.
and like when the time is there, I'll do it, right? Like if she ever comes up here, like I'm obviously gonna go
Yeah.
up here and pray with her. But at home, it's just, I don't know, like her ankle hurts and it's like, I prayed for her, but not with
Right.
her, for her, and
Yeah.
it's just a weird, I don't know.
I think that part of it at least, we all work in ministry. So then when you get home, you kind of take that ministry hat off,
Right.
and then you're not thinking about it. But the truth is, our home is also
Yes.
our ministry. Our
First.
home is it's our first ministry. Yeah, for sure. So if there's anybody we should be praying for, it should be our
Yeah.
wives. But I think it's hard to think about it in the moment because you've been kind of in this mode all day, and you come home and you just want to
Mm-hmm.
let go for a little bit and
Yeah.
play PlayStation or do whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, I need to be focused here too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Something she's done, especially here recently, is asking for it,
Yep.
asking for prayer, and that's I truly believe that's helped our relationship, but it has also helped me in my I'll say
Accountability.
accountability.
Pray for her.
Well, I'll say my quality of prayer. Quality of prayer. Um, I think everyone often thinks like, oh, I don't want to pray for people because I don't say good prayers, or like my prayers suck compared to theirs, compared to someone else's. But the more you do anything, the better you'll get at it. And so if you just begin to pray over people all the time, then eventually you won't feel inadequate in your prayers. There's no way possible. And I felt like that at some point in my life. So now that my wife is asking me to pray for them, now that I have kids asking me to pray for them, I do not feel that way. So my wife has definitely helped me in that.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is those are real like examples
Mhm.
of relationships making the other person stronger.
Yeah.
Helping the other person grow, helping the other person get better. I mean, my wife does incredible things for my relationship with God, and if that weren't true, then that would be a sign that our relationship isn't healthy.
Yeah.
One or both of us is not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And like for my wife, for me, my wife, number one, like I am, speaking of things we're not particularly naturally good at, I worry a lot.
Mhm.
Like my first instinct is to worry if
Yeah.
something goes on. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to fall apart. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna fix this? I can't stop it. What am I? And my wife is such a steady person. Like it is nearly impossible to shake her. She just does not get worked up. And so she is usually the one that's like, hey, we've been through things before, or you've been in this situation before, or whatever happens is not going to be the end of the world. You know, we'll be back next week. Like everything's gonna be okay. Like she is like kind of the constant in the like, hey, you're gonna be cool, and it helps me like refocus and change my attitude and respond in more of a way of faith as opposed to a way of fear. She kind of reins me back in and helps me focus. And then when I'm able to like relax and like let that worry go, then I can go do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do. I'm better. I'm better because of it. And also just because I know that I'm the spiritual head of my home. You know, my wife, she's a rock star. So like if I got to be the head of that, I got to be on my game.
Right.
And so a lot of times without even, she doesn't even really have to do anything. It's just the sheer motivation of I got to be on my game. Like I got to get up and read my Bible and spend time with God and grow and get better and get stronger as a Christian and as a believer, because it's not just about me. It's about my wife. It's about our home.
Yeah.
I've got to make sure that that's in order for her. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, it's that motivation. And to tie it all back into what we talked about Sunday, we can't as men, as husbands, do that without properly understanding. You know, the Bible tells us to love our wives. How?
As Christ loved the church.
The way Christ loved the church. We can't do that without understanding what that means. We got to know to the best of our abilities what that is so that we can carry that lifestyle out.
Yeah, so powerful. Yeah, like every time I read that, I'm like, oh man, how often
How we
I
are
fail.
failing.
Yeah.
Man.
It makes you just want to go in the next room and apologize.
Yes,
Like, hey,
yes.
I have not been. You want to go to dinner? Yeah, man.
Man, you got someone coming after you. I can just lay down my life. Hey, let me. I volunteer. Volunteer tribute.
And it's you know, and that's part of the reason that we focused on that on Sunday night and what that love is and what that love does, and you know, we talked about how one of the things that I wanted to hone in on is how the love of Christ it gives us freedom. It gives us we're able to let go of our own mistakes and our own, because like you said, you can look at that standard and you could be like, man, look how messed up I am.
Yes.
I'm not doing well. But it's like, no, the love of Jesus is in us for a reason. And even though we are imperfect and we are messed up, he still loves us.
Yep.
And so even in our own imperfections and our own shortcomings, we have to accept the fact that we are still loved. Our partners love us unconditionally, and we are to love them unconditionally, despite any flaws or problems that they may have. You know what I mean? It's all a teaching moment to realize, like, that's what this love is. It is an unconditional, beautiful thing that I don't deserve it. I'm in and of my own self not good enough for it.
Right.
But it's here. It's a free gift. That love that Jesus has for me is a free gift, and the love that I have for my wife, the love she has for me, that's a gift. She gives me that love every day. I give her that love every day, regardless. I don't have to wake up in the morning and decide that I'm going to love my wife today.
Yeah.
I love her no matter what. I love her as much today as I did yesterday, and I'm going to love her as much tomorrow as I do today. And there's no decision that needs to be made outside of that, you know. And the love of Christ is the same way. It's a constant. It's every day.
Yeah.
No matter what you've done or what you did or where you go, that love is always there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, we talked about, you know, how all of this can apply to those in a dating relationship or in a marriage relationship, but it's very much applicable as well for those of you who are not in a relationship at all. You know, you have to know the love of Christ. And I think it's very important as Christians to have your relationship with with Christ in check before you even begin to seek out relationships within the world. Paul wrote, I can't remember what letter it's in, what book of the Bible it's in, but it's something, he says something along the lines of, I wish that you could remain single as I am. But if you can't get married, like if you can't keep yourself from falling into temptation, be married. I believe the reason Paul said that was because we need to focus on our relationship with Christ above all else, and in that moment of the early church where they all had the fire.
Yeah.
We think about when we first became Christians, when we were on fire for God. I believe that's what Paul was wanting everyone to seek out, everyone to have at all times, that fire for God. And when we begin to throw variables and other people into our lives, that fire can dwindle very quickly. So we have to, as to properly love someone. Again, we have to know the love of Christ, but to properly know the love of Christ, we have to give up everything else and focus on that above everything.
And I think when your relationship with Jesus is in the right place, it helps ensure that you are getting into a relationship for the right reasons.
Yep.
Because another thing we talked about Sunday night is a lot of times people will use relationships and use sex and things like that to fill a void or numb themselves from what they're actually feeling and what's actually going on in their lives.
Yeah.
They want a relationship because they feel lonely. They want sex just because it makes them feel good. And when you have a proper view of your relationship with Christ, you have a proper view of how loved you are in Him, then you start to realize that you don't need all these other things to fulfill you. You are already fulfilled in your relationship with Christ.
Yes.
Like, as much as I love my wife, my relationship with Christ still comes first.
Yes.
And if for some reason she was not here, I am still loved by Jesus. That is not dependent on her.
Yeah.
I am so glad to have her. I am
Mhm.
so glad that I've been blessed with a great marriage.
Yeah.
But my relationship with Jesus doesn't depend on that.
Right.
My relationship with Jesus is already solid, and it needs to be, and it should be. And I think a lot of times we see these, especially in the younger stage of life, but I think it happens all across the board. We see these flippant, nonchalant relationships that wind up fizzling out or blowing up or turning into something that no one wanted it to turn into.
Yeah.
But the only reason that relationship started is because you were not secure in yourself. You were not secure in your relationship with Jesus, and you were looking for something to distract you from that. Distract you from that feeling, distract you from that emptiness, distract you from that loneliness. And a lot of times you think that it's going to start out. You think it's going to be great because it starts out great. But eventually you're still going to run up against the same problems. You're still going to have to look yourself in the mirror. And then that relationship implodes or you fall apart and you're like, where did I go wrong? It's because your foundation wasn't right. You weren't rooted in the love of Christ.
Yeah.
You were just trying to find something.
Yeah, and that goes for even those in relationships as well. If you're finding all your fulfillment in things that are not and things that are not Christ in your relationship in the things you're doing throughout the day, then it's wrong. Like Michael said, if Bethany were to go away, he would still know that he is loved by Christ. He would still be fulfilled. Yes, he would hurt. He would have pain, and there would be a moment of unfulfillment because whenever you're in a relationship, you're trusting in your wife. Like you do find fulfillment in your wife or in your husband if you're watching and you're a female. But we cannot find all of it in that person because we are imperfect creatures, and we cannot fulfill each other 100% of the time. We have to be seeking something that can fulfill us 100% of the time. The only thing that can, the only person that can, is Jesus.
Yeah. Grayson, I want to bring you in here because just I've heard your testimony. You've even shared your testimony with our young adults, and I feel like there's a large portion of it where you would say you were pursuing things to try to fill voids in your life.
Yeah, I think the main void was always, I mean, I never really had the dad in my life, and then my mom got married, right? And I was like, oh, I finally have that. Then they got a divorce, right? And my grandpa was my father figure, and he passed away. I mean, I say at a young age, but I was 15, 14, almost 15, or I just turned 15 when he passed. My uncle moved to Dallas, Texas at like right around that same time. And he was basically like my best friend growing up. So like I always lost something, and it still felt that way for a long time. Not necessarily because of them, but just that it just seemed to be a repetitive thing. Like I went to school at Trinity Lutheran until 5th grade and had my friends there, but then I left schools because my sisters were going to a Catholic school. So then I got my new friends there at that school for 3 years. Then I ended up going back to Saxony to another friend group. I got, like different friend group. And then I left Saxony after 2 years and went to Florida. And obviously all my friends in Florida, well, my closest friend lives in Wisconsin. It's like, well, I ain't going to Wisconsin, boys. Like, that ain't for me. And then my other friend, I mean, my closest, like, brother in my life, which we still talk, is actually, he was one of my coaches my junior year. And it was just like, well, I haven't been to IMG since, so I haven't seen him since then. So it's just, I was always losing that. That was one of my biggest fears whenever I was about to have the baby, when my wife was, when it was getting closer to the due date, because I was thinking about the friends I've made here and the friends I have here, and I was really worried that this baby was going to take that away from me, which I knew in a sense it would sometime, right, which I expected and was okay with. But I was just like, am I going to be able to be there for everybody still, and still do this small group and still hang out with our friends every once in a while and do these things, and keep these strong connections and be there for my wife and my baby, which is obviously priority. But in my head, I was like, I don't want to lose what we have. Yeah. Because it was the first time me and my wife had like a friend group and a community that we just, I think, fully trusted and finally found after years of marriage that we've been looking for. So it just seemed like a repetitive, everything's getting taken away. So that, and that's still, something I don't necessarily worry about anymore because, I mean, I've had the kid and everything's good. I mean, things have definitely slowed down, right? Like we're not hanging out with friends every day. But
except for here on the Young Adults podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
So yeah, that was definitely a big void, and I filled it with multiple things, from porn to sex to drugs to alcohol to just video game, just filling time, right? Staying busy. Sports is another one. That's a big distraction in some people's life. It's like, I don't have anything to do. I'm just going to go do that again. So yeah, that was definitely something growing up.
Do you want to talk about when you gave that up?
What?
All that. You remember when you said the prayer about giving all that up?
Yeah, it was a Saturday evening. We had it might have been Friday. It was the day before one of the Christmas services I went to. It could have been on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning, but I'm sure it was a Sunday morning. So I prayed on a Saturday night. I finally gave up women, and I knew I did with my whole heart. Like, it wasn't just like I'm doing this. It was just like I'm led to do this kind of thing. Because I gave up a lot. Like, I was done smoking weed and all that stuff, but I was still dating around. I mean, it depends what my version of dating was. They think we're dating, and I'm just like hanging out with multiple people. They thought we were dating. I did not. And I just told the Lord, like, I'm done with that. Like, I'm gonna wait till marriage. Like, when my wife's in front of me, like, let me know, like, because that's the next person I'm dating. That next Sunday morning, that year we had it was in this building. Over there we had like a 3-row of risers with like a choir. And my wife was like either the middle or the top. I can't remember, but all I remember is every single light in this whole place was hitting her. And I got so mad. I was just like, I literally just talked to you last night saying I'm done with this, and you're gonna throw a girl up here that I've never seen in my life, which I haven't, which is crazy because she's gone here every day, every service. So it was absolutely crazy that I've never seen her before. She knew who I was. She saw me, and I was so angry, but I still messaged her probably in the parking lot, like I DM'd her on Instagram. She didn't answer. I was not used to females not answering me. So that definitely humbled me in that moment. But I unsent and resent the message probably 3 or 4 times because I was like, she just don't check social media, I guess.
He was desperate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Man, he knows what he wants. You know what I'm saying?
Gotta do what you gotta do, brother.
And then, I mean, long story short, now we're married, So it's just,
So
it took me giving it up completely and meaning it 100% with my whole heart for the Lord to bless me with my wife.
So how would you say that leaning on the love of Christ in your life helped you get away from filling those voids with the wrong things?
I think seeing God at work. I mean, the most recent thing has been finances. Like living off my savings this entire past year just to be able to do the internship like 100% with no distraction. And that was the last thing I haven't given up yet, right? Like I thought I gave up my finances, but making $300,000 a year, it's easy to say the Lord's in control.
Yeah.
It's easy to buy that person's meal or give $100 every Sunday and feel good and be like, yeah, the Lord's in control. I mean, this is everything I've done. Like prove he's not in control. He's blessed me with all this and I'm returning and doing all these things. But when you don't have anything or have nothing coming in, how does it change? Right? Like, are you still buying that person's meal? Are you still giving on a Sunday? Because a lot of things change in your mind. It's like, well, I probably shouldn't give this week. I don't really got, much left. And I got a month left of this internship. So it's like, what are you going to do? And seeing the Lord continually provide like week after week or, month after month, just like random blessings constantly, and I'm not saying it's the random blessings that keep me motivated. But it's always like a surprise to see God do it again.
Yeah.
It's like one day at our old house, like I just opened the door and there was groceries there and I like called my mom, my grandma. I was like, you send me groceries? They're like, no. And I went and asked like both neighbors and they're like, nope, they're not ours. I was like, well, I'm done asking people. I'm just going to put them in my fridge. And I was just like, after that, I was like, that's awesome. But like, the Lord's not going to do that again. He's not going to bless me again. Like that was already huge. And then like weeks later at an Easter event, like somebody walks up to me and says, I just feel like I'm supposed to give you this. And it's like just cash money. And it's like, okay, something, like 2 days ago, it wasn't a lot, but we got like a check for like $30 in the mail from insurance. I'm like, I don't even know why we got this, but that helps. It's just always something.
Yeah. It's just awesome to know that like he really is always there. And he really does care about where you're at and what you're doing and what you're dealing with and what you're struggling with. He cares. He is a compassionate, loving presence in our lives, and it's so cool when you get to realize that and you get to walk in that and know that in your heart and in your mind. And that's, I mean, really the heart of what we've been talking about and what we've been doing is like, it's not just about, oh, I need to find this relationship and marry this person and that's what's going to make me happy. It's no, be the person God is calling you to be right now. Be in that relationship with him the way that you're supposed to be. And then when the time is right, find a person that helps you be even more in love with the Lord and pursue the Lord even more. That's how you know you're in something good.
Yeah.
And when you're in the process of trying to figure that out, do so in a godly way. And one thing I want to say before we kind of wrap this up and leave this message series behind is I think a lot of times, even with this mindset, there can be some pitfalls of thinking like, if you're in a relationship that's godly and it doesn't work out and you don't get married, that it's a fail. And that's not necessarily true either. If you are together and pursuing that relationship and pursuing Christ in a godly way, and then you guys just get to a point and you realize this isn't right. This is not. Maybe there's something else we're supposed to be doing. You know, if you're dating, if you're in a dating relationship, I'll say, and you guys just both realize this isn't it. That's okay. That's not a failure.
Yeah.
You didn't do something wrong. There's probably still going to be some hurt and some emotions attached to it, and that's okay. That's normal. That's fine. But I think there's sometimes where I've seen people who are well-meaning and they love the Lord, but they'll be in a relationship and they'll know something isn't right. This isn't where I'm supposed to be headed. But the fear of letting go causes them to hold on to that relationship and try to force it to work.
Yes.
Yeah, I was always scared of letting go.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that before. Like, I'd always do something to make them break up with me because, like, I didn't want to be the one to cut things off.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have that fear. And I just felt that it was important to say that before we end this. Like, I think that sometimes when people are talking about relationships and they're talking about dating, especially if you're in a relationship, like, you get this like, oh, well, that must mean that when I get into a relationship with another Christian, we are just destined to definitely get married.
Mm-hmm.
You might be. Maybe that is the person for you. But if you get to a point and you realize, and not just like, oh, I don't like the way they chew their food. Like, I'm talking about, because there's, in every relationship, there's going to be things that, like, you know, you just deal with. It's cool. It's whatever. We're people. Like I said, we're imperfect.
Yeah.
But if you get to a point and you're praying about it and you're seeking the Lord and you know in your heart, this isn't what's supposed to be happening, it is okay for you to let that go. It's okay for you to walk away from that. I know that it's scary. I know that there's uncertainty on the other side. But sometimes in your relationship with God, there's uncertainty on the other side in your mind, in our minds. It's not uncertain for God. He knows what's on the other side of that door. We may not always know.
Yep.
We may not always know, and that's okay. But if you're trusting him and you're following him and you're living according to his plan, even when you're uncertain, I promise you, you're going to wind up where you're supposed to be.
That's good.
So don't let the fear of that cause you to stay in something that you know isn't where you're supposed to be.
That's good. That's good. All right. We are going to wrap it up there. If you don't know, and if you are within the young adult age group, which is 18 out of high school to 35, we have a Christmas party.
30,
What did I say?
35.
30.
I mean, if you're 35,
But
I'm
if
probably not
you
kicking you out.
35 and you trying to come through, like, it's cool.
Man, sorry guys. We have a Christmas party coming up on the 17th of December. That'll be our last worship experience of the year. Please pull up.
It's gonna be cool. We're gonna have food and games and prizes and giveaways.
He can just stop at food, right? Like, I'm coming because there's food. Like, it doesn't matter what we do.
True.
If there's food,
Mm-hmm.
why would you not
There's
be there?
definitely
You
gonna
know, I
be
don't
food.
understand
Hey,
people.
we know what life is as a young adult.
Yeah.
Usually you have no money. We got
got you.
food. Free
got
free food's the best food.
That's true. That's very true.
And it's
December
not like it's
17th.
ramen either. Like, it's food.
It's gonna be food. Yes, it will be.
Well, we will see you all there, hopefully. If not,
But we still have young adult service, young adult worship experience this week as well on the 10th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So come by there as well.
Yes.
yeah, it's lit.
Doors open 6:30. Service starts at 7.
See y'all there.
It'll be great. Peace.
Peace.